Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day and welcome to an updated visionary PvP tier list. I made one of these like I want to say like a month ago, but a lot of things have happened. We had a crit update, we had new spells for balance, we had new spells for fire, we had a new spellament update for myth, and we've also seen strategies evolve. Given all of this, I feel like the tier list has changed a lot since the last time I made a video like this. So without further ado, let's get right into who I think is number 7 in the current meta. The tier list starts now. At the moment, it seems like life is definitely at the bottom of the tier list. Now, I'm not saying that they're not usable in PvP. I'm not saying that you can't get rank on a life wizard. All I'm saying is that they're held back by quite a few things. The biggest update that completely changed up the game for life is the fact that they can't crit heal anymore. So basically, all of the heals that they used to use aren't even useful. So here's an example of a setup that works enough to get you 1100 rank, right? This setup, the only heals that I even use now are Scion and Wings of Fate. Those are the only two spells that I even use, because when you're using 4-pip spells like Sathish, like Regenerate, because crit doesn't have the same impact that it used to, it's going to be very, very different, the scenarios where you're actually going to be able to out-heal anybody. Crit life was already held back by the fact that some schools were naturally good at one-shotting to the point where heals were ineffective, like Storm, Myth, Fire, and to a certain extent, Death. But now, those schools are even better against life, because there's just no way to recover against them whatsoever. Now, I'm not saying life is that bad. I think a lot of what life has to do involves protecting your shield, shielding a lot, weaknessing a lot. A lot of what life is about now is preventing incoming damage, as much as it used to be about just healing off the damage that you already did. If you think about shields and the way absorbs interact with them, it's not like life is bad, it's just a lot of their healing has been taken away, and for that reason alone, they are at the bottom of this tier list. The next up on this tier list is definitely Fire Wizards. Now, Fire did get an update recently, so if you guys haven't seen the video, it's definitely up on the channel. They got a Detonate update. Now, here's the thing. When you do an overtime on somebody, chances are you're going to do the 100% of the damage anyways, unless they triage it. And by the time they triage it, they are probably going to be open enough for you to not do a Detonate, but actually just do another hit. Now, when I made this tier list a while ago, what Fire used to do mainly was Glass Cannon, Trap Stack with Fuel, Fire Beetle, like the Fire Beetle item card, and use Pierces. They would just pierce to take off shield. With the Freet being gone, you can't just have Freet with a bunch of traps on and leave them immobilized for the next hit, which would be a kill shot. And Glass Cannon doesn't work because of that as well. And as a result, you're kind of looking at something where Fire has to do a lot of resist-oriented strat. The only problem is, even if you have every piece of gear giving you resist, Fire has the lowest resist out of everybody. They only have 55, so unfortunately, that is very hard to do for Fire. I think the only silver lining for Fire is that even though they have a limited number of options, because overtimes can just get triaged and shifted so easily, fewer people are fire warding now, and I think this was something that I predicted a while ago with the other tier list. It's definitely true. You don't need fire ward to beat a fire anymore, so that is a very huge silver lining for Fire. You don't need infal pets to, you know, counter the ward, and now you can kind of focus on Furnace. But Fire is limited to overtimes more than any other strategy right now because of the Ifrit nerf, and since triage and shift are so easily usable, overtimes just aren't that reliable, and that's just the meat of it for Fire. Overtimes, which really defines Fire as a school, can be countered by any school because of triage TCs and shift TCs. I think the biggest change from my previous tier list is that I just don't think Death is as good as one I thought it was gonna be, but also I feel like other schools have, with the recent updates, just gotten a lot better. The best strategies that Death has right now is that they have to blade up. And yes, there are some, you know, unique strategies like Vengeful Seraph that is starting to become more and more meta for Death Wizards. And this is giving them a very, very good way to one-shot people, which was holding them back before, since you had to be below 33% to Scion. But the problem is, I think Death just has too few options to compete, because other schools just have more options than them. Right now, almost every Death has to run the Minotaur or Poison Blade stacking strat, and Drains, even though they can be useful, unfortunately, set shields are very, very good against Drains. So even though the Drain update did make them better than they used to be, I think the reason Death is so low on this tier list is mainly just because of how predictable they are. I still think that a very, very good Death Wizard can go far. At the end of the day, Beguile, the way that Beguile works, the fact that you can dispel somebody into a Beguile, into a set shield, and basically not get affected by a Shrike, it still makes them the best school at countering Shrike. However, the problem is, because of their limited damage output compared to other schools, and the predictability of their moves and how they play, Death just isn't as good as other schools. A lot of what defines Death beyond Drains are self-damage hits, and self-damage hits like Empower, like Dark Pact, like Sacrifice, and even Juju, they're just not that good. But yeah, Death is super good, not really that bad at all. I just think that Death in this current point in the meta has been overwhelmed by a lot of the buffs that other schools have gotten. We'll get to that example right now with number 4. Storm is extremely good right now, and that is not an understatement. I would put them solid mid-tier along with Death, along with the other school that I'm going to say after this one. And the reason for that is simply because Scion just does a massive amount. This spell is so good that I can't say this about any other Scion. You can totally use this when the double condition is not met. There are times where an enchanted Scion does more than an owl, so the simplicity of what you have to do to win makes Storm really, really good. Yes, they have low health, and that's one of the only reasons you'll ever see them not being put all the way up to the top. The point of the matter is, though, health doesn't matter if your opponent cannot hit you. Storm has many other options besides Scion, including a stun combo with Stormlord and a bolting combo, I guess. You can just insane bolt. The fact that they have a cop-out, a very powerful spell, and a very good two-shot combo, it makes them fairly versatile as well. I think Storm is in a very good spot in PvP. I think if you want to counter the Scion, all you have to do is Aegis Spirit Blade or Aegis Elemental Blade, and then you will force the Storm to have to enfeeble you to get those blades off. It'll complicate it to the point where you'll buy yourself the time that you need to win against a Storm. But if you can't do that, then Storm has a very, very solid way to kill you. Storm is all about pushing for the dub as quickly as you can now. And if you can try to slow down their tempo, they are very beatable. So they have a very solid strength and a very solid weakness, and that's why they're number 4 in this tier list. I think number 3 of the mid, and this is the last mid-tier school I think on this list, is definitely gonna have to be Ice. Ice is actually, I thought that Ice was a little bit too powerful, I'll admit, but as I've started really going against more and more of them, I've started to notice that really when they do win, it's normally because of something random like a critical. At the end of the day, I think Ice is held back by the exact same thing that Death is held back by, and that's just the sheer simplicity of what they do. Almost every Ice you see will just go for the Frostbite into the Bomb, and they'll try to have a Sleet Storm pet maybe, a Balefrost up, they'll try to Blade up and pressure you, and if they can land a good Frostbite such that you're open, then you can't triage them because you're open to an Bomb. At the end of the damn day, what's really holding Ice up more than anything are their stats. The fact that you can have this much health, this much resist, and this much damage is always going to make Ice very good at PvP unless they balance it out. I don't think there's really much more to say about Ice. It is always going to be very decent at PvP. And yes, all the nerfs did affect it, but it also got a Frostbite buff. It didn't get a Frostbite nerf, it actually got a more powerful Frostbite. Ice really hasn't moved that much. It's just some schools have gotten a little bit better. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. I know that this is a surprising place, considering I put Balance at the lowest, literally lower than everything else in the last tier list. One change, and one change alone, made them extremely good at PvP. And you cannot understate what a huge effect this spell made. Balance of Power is by far the biggest buff that Balance has ever gotten in years. And I would argue that this is probably their most meaningful shift to supremacy in PvP. Balance has always had decent utilities like Mana Burn and obviously Supernova, and you'll notice that Supernova is very useful mainly off of the fact that everyone has damage auras now, but they seem to be not good at all because Gaze got nerfed by damage so much. However, now that Balance can change the bubble by itself, Gaze becomes an extremely powerful tool. Anytime you put a bubble up and you have the ability to gaze, anyone who changes a bubble in response to you runs the risk of getting gazed for a lot of damage and getting hit by the same school that they changed the bubble to. Now, obviously, this can be avoided by set shielding a lot, but if you're so busy set shielding to prevent the gaze from doing damage, while this bubble is up, things like Mana Burn, things like Scorpion, things like Sandworm, even things like Scion, you're letting very, very powerful hits be able to do a lot. If you have a bubble up, like a balance of power up, a supernova itself is doing an insane amount of damage. A balance that can keep bubble control and pressure properly with gaze is gonna win much, much more easily than other schools that keep bubble control. And I think the one spell that really puts balance over the top, Mana Burn, locks out some schools out of their high damage hits that are at the higher pit values. Storm with their Scion, Myth with their stun combos or their Scion, Ice with their Frostbite combos, even Life with their Blading Up for a Spinosaur. Mana Burn is one spell that accounts for the destruction of so many strategies that it's insane. I think the balance bubble is an exponential increase in power for balance. And honestly, I don't think balance is as powerful as, like, you know, to the power, to the OP levels. I do think that it's just better in terms of having a lot of versatile options because they can do off-school hits. And a lot of simple options. Keep bubble control, Mana Burn, and Supernova, and win. That's it. You know, it's really cool how many options a balance has. And because of that unpredictability, it has to be way up on this tier list. And with that, I think you guys have probably guessed that at the top of this tier list is 100% Myth. Now, if there was any question about Myth being good, the newest Spellament upgrade, this little troll with 2 pips, put them on another level. This put them on another level. When we're talking about options in PvP, Myth right now is the king of options. You can double stun block and set up for a Scion. They have very good blade removal so they can last in long games. They have stun strategies. They have an overtime. They have the currently most powerful shadow hit. And they have something that can hit through a set shield. The only good counter to Myth at the moment is to Aegis. And honestly, you can only really Aegis 6 things. If someone, if someone is running against someone with Aegis, you have other options. You don't have to Mystic against that. You can always Yellow Troll. You can now do this Troll minion and summon another minion that can break shields. You can summon Golem minions. You can literally Medusa through it. You can Athena. You can Minotaur. You have so many options, even against the one really good counter against Mystic, that you don't have to worry about any one thing as a Myth. I think out of all the schools right now, Myth is the one that needs some sort of nerf. And it's not because they're at the top of this tier list that I say this. It's because things like Baba Yaga just do way too much for what they do in a PvP match. But yeah, right now, Myth is the king. And I don't think that's even disputable with this latest troll minion thing, Spellman update thing. Y'all, I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. I'm actually fairly comfortable with this one compared to all the other ones I put out. I've been doing a lot of PP on everyone. If you have any opinions that don't agree with this, I'd love to hear them. Drop a comment letting me know. Thank you for all the love and support. There are tons of links in the description. My Twitch, my Twitter, my Discord, my Instagram, and my Patreon. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. So stay awesome. And yeah, yo.